Hey guys, welcome to the video. This is going to be electrical episode 4, I'm pretty sure. 4, yeah, this will be 4. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here. What I've been wiring up since episode 3. In episode 3 I did the wiring harness, and what I've been working on now is the dashboard. So let's take a look. Last night, or yesterday evening into the night, I was wiring this thing like a maniac. And now everything looks like an electrical bomb went off with electrical stuff all over the place. I got all sorts of stuff on the workbench. Got my voltmeter hanging there. More electrical stuff. Some jumper wires. I got somehow my soldering iron and extension cord ended up on the floor. That's my shop light. I got wiring diagram notes posted all over the place. Got some zip ties. Just a mess of tools and wires and everything as you're just kind of working around. Just got in one of those modes where you start getting things done and you don't really want to stop, which is good because I got a ton done. So first thing we'll do is I've added some fuses now to my distribution block, because now this purple wire feeds what I'm calling my engine circuit. This red wire feeds like my, let's call it accessory circuit, and this orange wire feeds my ignition circuit. I've got 3 amp fuses in here right now just for ultimate protection. End game, I'll probably need larger fuses, but as I'm doing things with jumper wires and whatnot, I put really low amp fuses in here just so that if I do short something, it just trips immediately to protect everything. Alright, let's check out some of the functionality of this dash. So first thing we have to do is reach behind us and turn on the main disconnect. Once we do that, we energize the dashboard. First thing you see here, I've got this little device. This has 2 USBs on it, and in the middle it reads your voltage. So right now I'm 12.9 volts. That's handy. I like that. That's cool. I absolutely had to have USB ports in here in order for my wife to be happy, so that's fine. I'll need it to charge cell phones and whatever else we're running in here. This is the Trailtech Voyager. This is a GPS trail system. What I like about it is it's really kind of a all-in-one dash cluster. So first off, it's GPS. So it tracks your speed, it tracks where you've been, you can go online, you can plot courses, you can do all sorts of things with it, and I like that. It's got a clock, it'll have my miles per hour. Once I have it wired up, it'll have an RPM. Once I install the sensor, it's going to have an engine temperature, it's got an ambient air temperature, and it tells you your voltage. This is all really good information. So I'm not going to have a tachometer on the dash. I'm not going to have a speedometer on the dash. I'm going to use this device. I bought all new wiring harness for this device so that I can switch this. There's 2 screws back here, and this will come off the dash, and I can switch this between the Bug and the dirt bike. Right now, these 3 switches on my wiring diagram are just called light bar. Because I don't have my light bar yet, I don't know how I'm going to wire that up. I'm just going to leave them as light bar for now. They're fed off of the same circuit that's feeding the GPS and feeding the USB. And I'm additionally going to have 2 more switches right here. One's going to be for the dome light and one's going to be for the backup light. Over here I've got, this is going to be my left and right turn signals. This is going to be hazards on, hazards off. That'll be low beam. That'll be high beam for the headlights. In the center here, I've got a green LEDs for the turn signals. I've got these 2 red LEDs. One is for oil pressure, the other is for the alternator light. I made the ignition as its own dedicated power. So coming from my fuse block, I've got 1 wire that comes all the way to this switch, and it's fused, and then from this switch, when I turn this on, the LED lights up. This LED just tells me that the ignition is on, and then this goes straight back to the coil. There's no coil back there yet, so it doesn't go anywhere yet, but that's what this will do. This will feed ignition. The wires on the back of this are all soldered because I'm considering this to be my most important circuit, because if this circuit goes down, the engine will immediately turn off. So this is completely standalone, totally dedicated to itself. The next one here I labeled motor. What this one does is when I turn this one on, this one energizes it. This light goes on just to let me know that this is on and that it has power. This one is fused separately from the ignition, but this one is going back and it's feeding my electric choke, it's feeding the alternator light, and it's feeding the oil pressure light. So if you noticed, when I turned on the motor light, the oil and the alternator lights go on. Now next to that is my fuel pump switch. The fuel pump switch is actually fed off of the same circuit as the motor switch, but I gave it a separate switch because actually in a lot of scenarios I want independent control of my fuel pump off of the motor or the ignition. So if I turn this on, the fuel pump runs. I don't want to leave it on because I don't want the fuel pump running dry. My intention, all these are soldered on the back side, so these are, I'm setting these up to be as safe as possible. But my thought is, if something happens to the fuel pump or the motor circuit, the engine will shut down, but it will not shut down immediately. Like if my fuel pump loses power or if the fuel pump poops out, I'll have probably about 30 seconds to work with that, because as the carburetor starts losing fuel, the motor is going to gradually lose power. So I would have some time to get to the shoulder or whatnot. Whereas if the ignition craps out, the engine will just immediately die. So let's say, for example, I'm barreling down the road and my electric choke shorts out. That'll take out my fuel pump, and that'll take out the motor, which is feeding the motor circuit's feeding the fuel pump, and it's feeding the oil pressure light and the alternator light. So I would lose power and the engine would start shutting down, but it wouldn't be immediate. If that happened and that was all on the ignition, then as soon as that electric choke would short, it would pull power from everything and the ignition would shut off, and even if I was barreling down the highway, the motor would immediately shut off, and I don't like that. I want to minimize that situation as much as I can. So that's why I dedicated the ignition with its very own circuit. So what I've done back here, this is my main harness that's coming from the distribution block. It comes up here and it wraps around and it's zip tied right here. I've got some slack in here because what I'm hoping I can do, is that I can unscrew the dash. I'll have enough slack here that I can pull the dash out, turn it sideways, and feed it through this hole so that I can get the bug body off. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work. Over here where I've got the alternator and the oil pressure light, I've got plugs in here because since this is separate from this hole, these wires will have to be able to be unplugged. And then same thing when I do the wiring for the headlight switches, those will also have a plug. More than likely what's going to happen is once I've got this wiring harness complete, I'm leaving some slack in here, and I'll probably get one weather tight connector to handle all the wires heading to these. So I'll just have one connector right here. What I've been trying to do is these switches up here are for the ignition, the motor, and the fuel pump. These are soldered because I'm considering these more important. So these are all soldered, whereas like these switches are going to be for light bars and whatnot, and the voltmeter down here, these are just slide-on spade connectors, because if those go south while I'm driving down the road, although I'll lose those accessories and I might pop the fuse feeding them, that's all independent from the ignition and the motor circuits. So I'm trying to be a little bit more meticulous with the ones that control the engine so that I'm as reliable as possible. One thing that I am regretting a little bit is I went through all this effort to make my fuse box accessible on the trail, and then I went ahead and I built this dashboard inaccessible. You know, it's screwed on here, and once this fiberglass front end is on here, none of this is reachable. I'm not going to be able to get to this onto the trail unless I take the one-piece front end off. So I kind of screwed up there. I'll probably just leave it for now, but I don't know, maybe at some point I'll make the dash so that it hinges down from the inside, so that if I need to access something from the trail, maybe I could fold it down. I'm not sure. So I think that's it for episode 4. I just want to show you guys that I basically set up the dashboard, and I've got some power running to it, and that's pretty exciting because now I've got some lights that light up and my GPS lights up, and it's kind of starting to feel like it's coming alive. In the meantime, I'm also working on some mechanical parts of the motor to get that ready to fire it up. So it's pretty exciting because, man, I'm thinking within 2-3 weeks I might be cranking her over. So, man, that's pretty exciting. I'm still working on the wiring harness because as I do this, I'm still finding things that I need to tweak, and I'm modifying that in the wiring harness. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope it's helping you or motivating you to work on your own Baja, your own trophy truck, drift car, daily driver, whatever. I just hope it's helping you guys so that you can get out into the garage and work on something. And thanks for watching the video. I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.